The streets of Patna buzzed with life, a chaotic symphony of rickshaws, street vendors, and the hum of a city that never slept. Sarah Laurent, a French model with striking blue eyes and a cascade of golden hair. She moved through the crowd like a vision. She was here for a photo shoot, but the city's raw energy had already captivated her. The air was thick with the scent of spices and the faint tang of the Ganges. It was in a narrow alley, tucked away from the main road, that Sarah found the mirror. The street vendor, an old man with eyes that seemed to see too much, held it out to her. The mirror was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Its frame was carved with intricate patterns, swirling like smoke, and its surface seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. "This mirror holds more than your reflection," the vendor said, his voice low and gravelly. Sarah laughed, a sound like music, and handed him the money. She didn't believe in superstitions. That night, in her hotel room, Sarah held the mirror up to the light. Her reflection stared back, but something felt off. The eyes in the mirror weren't hers. They were darker, deeper, and they seemed to smile at her. She shook her head, blaming it on the jet lag, and set the mirror down. But as she slept, the whispers began. Soft at first, like a lover's breath against her ear, then louder, more insistent. She woke in a cold sweat, the room silent but for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. The next day, the photo shoot was a disaster. The camera seemed to capture something else, a shadow behind her, a flicker in her eyes that wasn't there before. The crew whispered among themselves, but Sarah brushed it off. She was used to being the center of attention, but this felt different. That night, the whispers returned, and this time, they had a voice. "Sarah," it said, smooth and velvety, like dark chocolate, "I can give you everything you've ever wanted." She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. The mirror on the dresser seemed to glow, and in its surface, she saw him. A figure, tall and impossibly handsome, with eyes that burned like embers. He smiled, and it was a smile that promised everything and nothing at all. "I am your servant," the figure replied, "a djinn, bound to this mirror, and I can make all your dreams come true." Sarah laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "This is a dream," she said. The djinn's smile widened. "Is it?" The gifts began the next day. A call from her agent. A major fashion house wanted her as the face of their new campaign. A package arrived at her hotel, filled with jewels that sparkled like stars. And then there was Karan. She met him at a cafe near the Ganges. He was tall, with dark eyes and a smile that made her stomach flutter. He introduced himself as a historian, specializing in the legends of Bihar. When she mentioned the mirror, his expression changed. "That mirror is dangerous," he said, his voice low. "It's said to hold a djinn, a spirit that grants wishes, but demands a price." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You sound like the vendor." Karan leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "I can help you, Sarah, but you have to trust me." There was something about him, something magnetic, irresistible. That night, they sat in her hotel room, the mirror between them. Karan traced its carvings with his fingers, his touch delicate, almost reverent. "The djinn isn't what it seems," he said. "It's trapped, bound by an ancient curse, and you might be the key to freeing it." Sarah shivered, though the room was warm. What happens if it's freed? Karen's eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw something dark flicker in their depths. "That depends on you." Their relationship grew more intense with each passing day. Karan was unlike anyone she'd ever met, charming, intelligent, and with a touch of danger that made her pulse race. One night, after hours of researching the mirror's history, they found themselves tangled in each other's arms. His lips were soft against hers, his hands exploring her body with a hunger that matched her own. The room was filled with the sound of their breathing, the heat between them almost unbearable. But as they lay together, Sarah noticed the mirror. It seemed to glow faintly, and for a moment she thought she saw the Djinn's face in its surface, watching them with a smile that sent a chill down her spine. The gifts continued, but so did the nightmares. Sarah's reflection in the mirror began to change, her eyes darker, her smile sharper. She started losing time, waking up in places she didn't remember going to. And then there were the shadows. They moved on their own, twisting and writhing like living things. One night, she woke to find one standing at the foot of her bed, its form shifting and pulsing. She screamed, and it vanished, but the feeling of being watched never left. Karan was her only solace. He held her when she woke from nightmares, his touch calming her frayed nerves. But even he seemed different, more intense, more possessive. One night, as they lay together, he whispered, "The Djinn is getting stronger. We need to free it, Sarah, before it's too late." She looked into his eyes and saw something she hadn't noticed before. A hunger, not for her, but for the Djinn's power. The final confrontation took place in an ancient temple on the outskirts of Patna. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the weight of centuries. The mirror sat on an altar, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. "This is it," Karan said, his voice trembling with excitement. "The ritual will free the Djinn, and we can control its power." Sarah hesitated. What if it's a mistake? What if we can't control it? Karen's smile was cold. We'll have to take that chance. As the ritual began, the whispers returned, louder than ever. The Djinn's face appeared in the mirror, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. "You've come to free me," it said, its voice echoing in Sarah's mind. But as the final words of the ritual were spoken, something went wrong. The mirror shattered, and the Djinn's form emerged, a towering figure of smoke and fire. It laughed, a sound that shook the temple to its foundations. "You thought you could control me?" it roared. "I am no servant, I am a king." Karen's face paled. "Sarah, run!" But it was too late. The Djinn's hand closed around Karan, lifting him off the ground. Sarah watched in horror as he was consumed, his body turning to ash in an instant. The Djinn turned to her, its smile cruel. "And you, my dear, will be my queen." Sarah ran, the Djinn's laughter echoing in her ears. She didn't stop until she reached the Ganges, its waters dark and endless. She looked into the river and saw her reflection. But it wasn't her. It was the Djinn, its eyes burning with a promise. "You can't escape me," it whispered. Sarah fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had thought the Djinn was the villain, but the real monster had been Karan all along. And now, she was trapped in a game she couldn't win. The whispers returned, softer this time, almost comforting. "You are mine," the Djinn said. "Forever." And as the first light of dawn broke over the river, Sarah realized the truth. She had never been in control. The Djinn had chosen her from the beginning, and there was no escape.